Paul, Susan, and Pancho. Where are you? There. How are you? You choose one. Paul, as the youngest filmmaker, film person among us, what was your reaction to this?
To the film?
Film.
I've seen it before. In the purest elements of storytelling, I thought that, well, first off, thank you everybody for coming, to be honest. I flew back today partly to honor my grandma who died at 106, as was mentioned last year. It was really cool to see her, just to see her scoring here and there with an audience again. I think that she and Renfrew were the most interesting characters to me because they each change a lot. The others are pretty much set in their ways and are quite good, but you could really see the influence of theater and silent film on them, the lack of competition from television and the internet. But I think that there was something really unbridled about those two roles and those two performances.
I found it fascinating as I was sitting here, and I've seen this 2 or 3 times, is the use of silence.
Yeah.
You know, we are bombarded by so many sounds when we go to the movies these days that it's intriguing to sit through many long sequences which are pure silence.
Did it sound like that in the theater originally, or is...
I believe it did, yes. Unless there was no reason to have an accompaniment with it because it was a sound film, obviously. But
and then there was punctuated by screaming.
Yes, which made it all the more frightening, I suppose. Well, it came out of nowhere. Susan, to see your mother on the screen, you know, which has been a long time ago, how do you react to her on screen?
I get this marvelous joie de vivre that Mom had. It was there so many years ago, and it carried all the way through her life till ripe old age. And she had a sort of a freedom of expression, and she enjoyed what she was doing, and she laughed at herself. And she was a great storyteller.
I tell you, yes. How many times I've heard that. She said it was a phrase she used often.
And I think that Pancho got a lot of her character in a book that he wrote, Memoirs of My Mother.
There are 2 books which this audience might be interested in. One is by Pancho, a memoir of...
There's a table outside as you leave, all donations.
No. Sorry. But it's available. It came out about 5 years ago, I think, and it's available both in English and in Spanish. And the other book that you might be interested in is by a man called David Skal, S-K-A-L, and that was published about 25 years ago. It's called Hollywood Gothic, and he devotes a whole chapter to the making of this version of Dracula and other versions of the play and the film.
Her father was sorry.
It was actually David's comparison of the 2 versions
Yes.
of Dracula that caused Universal to try to find a negative and a print. One missing reel was in Cuba, and they restored the print, and it has had a great success. I started going to film festivals with my mother 25 years ago. Yes. The first one was in the United States, in Dallas, Texas. And Paul and Chris came from New York. They must have been 15 and 17. And they showed this film on a huge screen, nipple bumps and all. and I remember it was either Paul or Chris afterwards said, "I understand why Grandpa married you."
I'll leave that to Chris.
I remember being with you both in Guadalajara at the festival there, and what it astonished me, and I've appeared with her 3 or 4 times, is that this is a lady who had not made a film in 60 years,
Yeah.
almost, and but people mobbed her. They were so taken with her, and I had never seen anything quite like that.
I think we had sort of 2 mothers in one. I remember as a child when we would go to Mexico, my mother was really a big personality. There were autograph hunters, photographers. We'd go in a restaurant, and they would immediately play her theme song from Santa.
Yes.
And my father was in the background. And then we come back here, and my father was the important figure in Hollywood.
Indeed.
And our mother was just our mother, packing the lunches and no makeup. It was quite a juxtaposition.
And her own father was somewhat disapproving, right, of her some of her roles. Sorry, my grandma was Lupita's father. Was that the case?
Yes, well, he didn't. My grandfather in Mexico was very stern and old-fashioned. He didn't want her to be in the movie business at all. And it was almost a miracle that he actually let her go with her Irish grandmother as her chaperone. And there were big fights every time she'd go back to Mexico for premieres and whatnot. My grandfather would throw her out of the house and be angry and whatnot.
And yet she was helping them out financially.
Oh, yes.
Right? Yeah. I'm bringing it up because that sort of joy of life, her own story was, to some degree, her escaping from a degree of, I imagine if she hadn't become an actress and hadn't moved to Los Angeles, she would have had a very different experience.
I think she was one of 9 children.
The eldest of 9.
The eldest of 9.
And life in Mexico City, or Mexico, in the late 1920s, a woman was kept in the kitchen and taking care of the other children and married off. And my mother, as she said herself, she escaped and traveled the world, had a marvelous marriage to a European, a Czechoslovakian, a filmmaker also. My father produced 30-some-odd films. She had really an amazing life. The 2 of them did.
Indeed, yes. The fact that she came from Oaxaca knowing no English, and then she went to Germany to marry Paul in Czechoslovakia with knowing no German. And you have a story about knowing something, the Berlin Museum event.
Yes, actually, my father went in 1932. He was sent to Berlin to head up Universal's productions. And after 6 months, he sent for my mother. They were married, and they lived there till late 35. My mother was Catholic and had a Mexican passport. My father was Jewish, but he had an American passport by then. So he was sort of safe. But their language in common became German. He didn't speak Spanish. He didn't speak English very well. So they spoke German. And then when they came back to Hollywood, all of the emigres, their friends who came back here, filmmakers, coffee clutches on Sunday at our house, was all in German. Susie and I had a German governess. So we grew up with German first. And we, in Berlin, the opening of the Berlin Film Museum about 12, 13 years ago, we were invited. And as we were walking from the Potsdamer Platz to the Sony building, I saw there were a crowd of like 2,000 guests there. And I realized that I told my mother, you're going to have to sing for your supper tonight. You're going to have to talk. And when it was her turn to get up and speak to everybody, she said, I'm going to try to do this in German. And here we were 70, 80 years later, and she spoke in fluent German for 20 minutes. I was absolutely amazed.
I was going to say that neither Pancho nor I knew that our parents had accents until a very late age.
Until we were teenagers.
Neither one ever lost their accent.
Right.
You have a story about shoes and your grandmother.
Sounds kinky, but I don't recollect which one.
All right. You came out here in an automobile shoeless.
I'm sure you're glad to hear that, Mom.
No, one of your trips across country to stay with Grandma, I think the first time you...
Oh, I was in my hippie phase. I was really happy watching this. I didn't bring my 6-year-old to the screening, but my 13-year-old, my 10-year-old kids are here. So don't do this, whatever I did, kids.
All right, please don't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's not at all. Yeah, I was feigning being rebellious, I'm sure. I don't know what happened with I was shoeless and
The story that I heard from your grandmother was that you and Chris arrived together, and you had an appointment with a studio the next day, and you had no shoes.
I believe that. Yeah. We used to come out here. My brother and I, as was pointed out, is a wonderful filmmaker. And we've each now, we work on things together, but we direct separately. And he's not here because he's filming something in Argentina right now, actually. But we used to come out here and pack in about 100 meetings into 3 or 4 days. And it was actually really amazing to be staying in this house with pictures of John Huston and Ingmar Bergman and sort of friends and clients of my grandparents, and paintings by Rivera and people who had crushes on my grandmother, Mexican artists, etc. And to go be selling whatever we were trying to do to make a living.
But the story I heard was that she removed the falling apart shoes that you had and sent.
Yeah, I think she bought me some shoes. Yeah, whenever I'd have career advice from my grandmother, whether it be should I do this film or that, she would always say, "Take the job." She
good advice.
She was a worker, and also she gave there's this saying in my family: some years you buy the jewels, some years you sell them. Which leads into a lot of fear, which goes along with take the job. But look, the positive thing is that it was so clear that that both she and my grandfather had found this profession which allowed them to be, that rewarded eccentricity and allowed them to be as much themselves as they wanted to be.
Yeah, they were. I didn't know your grandfather, but they had a remarkable life together.
Well, remarkable, they didn't speak a common language when they met.
Indeed.
And and that she fell in with this pack of European intellectuals, essentially, and not, Billy Wilder, Lubitsch, whose daughter is here, Nikki Lubitsch is here. Yes. And people who had been sort of thrown together in this watershed of emigration.
I remember one time she called me and said, "I want you to take me to the Goethe Institute." And I thought, okay, well, I'll be happy to do that. And I didn't know what the event was, but it turned out to be documents from the family about a fund set up for the refugees from Nazi Germany, which your father and mother did. And it's quite extraordinary. I mean, they helped support many people for a long time.
The European Film Fund in the late 30s, where those immigrants who were here and already working would contribute to a fund enabling more of mostly the film writers, directors, actors, Jewish, to somehow escape and find work here. Affidavits, cash, monies to help them through the first year. He was awarded by the German government the Rosette of the something something, and he has a permanent room, the Paul Kohner papers, in the museum in Berlin, the Film Museum. So he's been honored for his work.
Yes. This is a good house on a Saturday afternoon. There's a lot of people. And
It is close to Halloween, so.
Yes, but the film played well with this audience, which is a tribute to it in a big way.
Actually, Mom passed away just about 1 year ago, and not at 106, but at 106 and a half, which, like when we were little children, those half years count. And it was just a year or so before that when a reporter had called her from Mexico City. I was usually over at her house most of the time and took care of any interviews or whatever, but he talked to her apparently for a long time about her career and the fact that she had a birthday coming up, and he asked her whether she had any trepidations about her age, and she said, no, maybe the normal ones, and he said, well, you don't have to worry. Remember, you were bitten by Dracula. She loved to say that.
That's lovely, yeah. I think that's a nice way to end. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.